We have been up from the FCL with Eric Garfield, then to Bradenton with Thomas Zinzarella, stopped in to see Andy Durham with the Greensboro Grasshoppers, and now bringing back from the Altoona Curve, Jon Mozes, and that is no N and spelled with a Z. Jon, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm watching the tarp go on the field here, which I'm not happy about, but we're going to play tonight.
I hope so. I got an alert before we jumped on here. It says severe thunderstorms from like 2:25 to like 9 o'clock. So maybe as it's heading over into the mountains, it can split up a little bit before it gets to you guys. But Altoona here, as they sit, everybody knows in my heart, anybody that's watching this here, we were talking about this beforehand. I got the Altoona Brookies hat. The Brookies are coming back. Definitely my favorite team in the system, team I see the most, sitting at 21-39 as we speak. Last place in the Southwest Division of the Eastern League. Last in OPS. Second in Ks. Only to Richmond. Second to last in batting average at 221. 10 out of 12 in walks and hits per innings pitch. 1.425, 11 out of 12 in ERA at 470. Jon, it's been a rough start to the season for the Curve, man.
Yeah. You got a couple guys that are underperforming. You got, some normal sort of limits. Early in the year, it was sort of apparent how the bullpen was a little bit thinner than we thought to start the year. We had a couple of veteran guys like Chris Gow and Isaac Matson, who pitched pretty well when they were here, but they went up to AAA weeks ago. And there hasn't really been great reinforcements. Cameron Junker didn't have a great year. Tyler Samaniego just got back from the injured list. So it's been sort of hard to hold a lead whenever the Curve have had a lead. But, you're talking about the offensive numbers there. It's really been an up and down year for that group.
Yeah, it's been very tough. And when I've had you on here before, talking about like not really looking at the record at times. I mean, as a Curve fan, you want to see your team win. The people that are out there in Altoona, there are people that are just specifically Curve fans. They're not, Pittsburgh Pirates prospect, junkies or watchers or whatever it may be. But last year, we saw Henry Davis come up to the major leagues, Joshua Palacios. We saw Liover Peguero. This year from, last year's team, you have Kyle Nicholas, you have Jared Jones. So there have been players that have kind of been coming up through, and you guys just lost another guy that if you thought the starting pitching and those whips and the ERAs, I mean, you lose a guy in Braxton Ashcraft to the Indians who had a great debut last night. I mean, that's kind of, if you're looking for individual types of achievements, I mean, Braxton's a good example of that.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the best control and command of the strike zone that the Pirates have in their minor league system coming out of Braxton Ashcraft. I got a chance to talk to him after what ended up being his last start with us. He struck out 12 guys, didn't walk a batter in 7 innings in Richmond. And I was just sort of curious, where does this great control and command come from? And he said, well, my dad was my coach growing up. And, when I was 7, 8 years old, Dad, would catch, the bullpens that you do with your 8-year-old kid. He'd just sit on a bucket. And he said his dad would intentionally sit without a backstop behind him. And if Braxton would throw it past him or by him, Braxton would have to go get it. So, that in combination with his dad saying, look, if you don't throw strikes, you don't pitch. So it's sort of always been instilled in him at a young age that if you're going to pitch, you got to throw strikes. And then finally his body cooperates with him, right? He had the Tommy John in 21, missed all of 22, pitch count, pitch limit last year. And now he's just a full go, and we're seeing 3+ pitches. The curveball and slider are terrific. 96, 97 mile an hour fastball. And he throws it over all the time. He's not afraid about challenging hitters, and just really happy that he's healthy. I mean, it's a well-deserved promotion. He was easily one of the best 3 or 4 arms in the Eastern League this year. So Glad to see the AAA debut went well. I didn't expect otherwise, and since he's already on the 40 man, I wouldn't be surprised if he pitches in Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, and that's something that's been, I mean, even all over X, even today I was discussing that with some guys. We're all having those discussions about, you talk about not having those pitch limits and those innings limits within individual games, trying to decide, how long he will go into this season coming up to Pittsburgh. I definitely do expect that at some point in time. A lot of people are discussing right now, would it be as a starter? Would it be as a bullpen arm? We've seen teams like the Milwaukee Brewers use a lot of their prospects in the bullpen. One of the biggest examples I always use is when the White Sox called up Chris Sale. He started out as a bullpen arm. So, John, I'm not going to put you on the spot to kind of get into that discussion because he's sitting at about 60 innings at this point in time in his season. But definitely would see that he would be up in Pittsburgh at some point in time. They're going to need help. They always need extra arms. So my question to you kind of would be, is there like a next man up, a next man that would be, possibly pushing towards a promotion? I know that there's guys that have been, underperforming and struggling throughout this year, but if you had to kind of look towards those guys that may find their way up to Indianapolis, is there anybody you're thinking about right now?
I think Sean Sullivan is probably pretty close. He's made 32 starts in Altoona, and 20 times he's allowed 2 runs or less. It's a guy who really knows how to pitch. The curveball's been really good this year. The changeup is good. It's not quite the electric fastball like you're used to with Jared Jones or Paul Skeens or even Braxton Ashcraft and Bubba Chandler. But it's still good enough, right? Like he throws 92 to 94, and he's been up to 96 in the past, but I think he lives a little more comfortably at 92 to 94. I think he's a guy that's probably going to go soon here. Every time he goes out there, it's 6 innings and 2 runs or less at this point in the year. I think another guy who is probably going to push his way into that conversation in the second half is Bubba Chandler, mostly because guys at this level just can't touch the fastball. And I think that's really sort of an interesting development challenge because the fastball is so good that he's not really getting punished for mistakes because guys just can't square it up at AA. Sure, you want to see health, you want to see progress with the slider and with the curveball. The changeup's been really good for him this year. I think he really does have a secondary weapon there. But that's sort of some of the feedback that I get when I ask scouts about some of our guys that, Bubba Chandler, the fastball is just so darn good that you wonder how much he even needs to use his other pitches to get guys out at this level that, at a certain point, it may be better for his development to get feedback from older hitters at AAA.
Yeah, and the one thing is that, I mean, he did have a little bit, everybody was scared. It was put out all over social media. I mean, I was scared that, he was removed from the game. Talks about like an elbow injury that he had as a kid. And like sometimes it tightens up and it's like, oh God, don't do that to us, Bubba. But I mean, he's only pitched a little over 36 innings this year. Mixed results at times. Don't know how much of that is, injury related because he had absolutely, one of his worst outings was, when he was pulled and then it ends up being that injury earlier on in the year. It was a similar type thing where I think he had a game where he didn't go the full inning, but was almost up to like 35 pitches and couldn't find the zone. So you're wondering if it's, something like that acting up. But like you talked about, his fastball is electric. One pitcher that everybody was also looking for, this year, looking at the Altoona, rotation to start the year with a Braxton Ashcraft, a Sean Sullivan, Thomas Harrington, unfortunately with the shoulder injury during spring training, that couldn't happen. But Anthony Solomito has been like a little bit of a strange case this year. Has an even 6 ERA, 1.633 whip, only 30 innings. We've seen him used kind of in relief at times here, only getting like 1 to 2 innings. I always reference, if you could go back and search it, it's Andrew Destin did an article on him, and it was a very good article about him trying to, add to his lower body to be able to get that velocity, that pitch velocity he had at the beginning of last year. But with Anthony Solomito, I mean, what are you seeing, day to day up there?
Look, I mean, he puts the work in every day. He spends a lot of time in the advanced meetings before he goes out there. He knows his opponent very well. It's just a situation where he's not completely at full strength. I mean, at spring training this year, there was like a flu bug that went around Pirate City, maybe 2-3 weeks left in camp. It was actually right around the week that I was there for the spring breakout game. And I was told that Solomito got hit pretty hard by that. He was supposed to pitch in that spring breakout game and then ended up not because, he was thrown off kilter, right? He was under the weather for 4, 5, 6 days in a row. And it's a little strange that we haven't seen the same guy that we saw last year. You referenced that story that Andrew Destin wrote for the Post-Gazette, and I remember overhearing some of their conversation in the clubhouse, and Anthony is like a little bit of a nerd in a good way, right? In the way that he understands his body and the movements of it. He was talking about in that situation sort of pronating versus supinating when he throws the ball. So, his arm swing is so unique, right? That lower 3/4 angle, it's long in the back. And sometimes he struggles to consistently get through that same arm path. And, there's a difference when you throw the ball slider coming across the ball or change ups from sort of going the other way on it. So he was talking about in that conversation about how that's something he's still sort of working at here. And I get it. That is that's a hard thing for a guy to figure out. Right. And, he's only 21, right? You can't lose faith or lose sight of the guy just because there is so much beautiful potential still there.
Yeah, with him, and that was like something that, I did remember reading that as well. Is that if it's like one time, if the slider's good, then the curveball's not good. I mean, the changeup's probably not going to be as good.
Yeah.
If the changeup's good, the slider's not going to be as good. And like you mentioned, only 21 years old, was up in Altoona last year at only 20. So, I mean, there is, tons of development that can be done. I think that like us as, Pirates fans as well, looking at it from afar, you're looking at, the pitching factory that the Pirates have been, become. And when you see a guy slip even just a little bit, people just start to worry a little bit. But then, I mean, guys are developing and working on stuff even up into the major leagues. I mean, we've seen, Jared Jones struggle in a couple of games recently where he wasn't finding the zone, and another one where his fastball wasn't working. So he had to learn, to lean on that slider. But I'm going to go to the hitters here for a second. And I have to thank you once again for teaching me how to pronounce his name. And I tell everybody how to pronounce it now. Sung-Chae Chang has not gotten off to the greatest start in Altoona this year. And it's something we saw the struggles from last year when he was called up kind of continue a little bit. Have seen glimpses of the player that I think we all believe that he is. On the season, slashing 217, 333, 364, below 700 OPS, does have the 7 home runs, but he does have 58 Ks and only 29 walks. And that's something that is completely out of his element because he's always been a guy that's been, very close in that K to walk ratio. So what are you seeing from Chang this season? And like I said, I think he's been doing a little bit better for the past 3 weeks, maybe to a month.
Yeah. Look, the defense is a lot better this year than it was last year. I talked to him a little bit when we were in Akron a few weeks back, and he was just like, he just feels so comfortable with everything that's here now. Offensively, it's been a little weird. I mean, he's at like a 550 OPS when we play at home, but 840 when we play on the road. All 7 of his home runs are in road games this year. So it's like a little weird, sort of the way that Chang's season is played out. But, I think he's still sort of going through the adjustment of seeing great fastballs every day. He's a guy that's going to get every opportunity to right himself. And, he's just missing a little bit in the strike zone, which has been pretty tough. That's that's often an indication that a guy is like a little bit late getting to the baseball through his swing. So it's a little strange to see him swing and miss at pitches in the zone because, he's always, as you said, he's always been a guy that's been able to put the ball in play and get to elite velocity or very good breaking stuff. So it's a little bit of a strange start to the year, but at the same time, I'm not super worried about him because he brings a great attitude. He helps you win every day, right? He still runs really well. As I said, the defense has been really good this year at short and at second base. So, I think another guy you should just have a little bit of patience with. He's only 22. He's still pretty young. So, I think that's a good reminder for the folks that are listening and watching. Like, this stuff is not always linear, right? Like sometimes, everybody assumes like, oh, success at A-ball, success at Double-A, success at Triple-A, success in the big leagues, yay! But it never really plays out this way,
Yeah, and like when I was talking to Andy from Greensboro last week, I always talk about that, and I think you and I have talked about this as well as that jump and the difference between the high A ball and the Double-A, which could be like one of the, other than Triple-A to the majors, just a very difficult jump. And you're talking about guys that are actually, pitchers that are able to locate their pitches better. You said higher velocity. There's different stuff. They actually know where that fastball is going. But you actually have seen some guys come up from Greensboro this year so far. I mean, I think of like a Sammy Ciani is a big one. He had been in Greensboro for a while, so it's like get to Altoona, and he's had periods of success here and there. We actually just got to see his older brother take it to the Pirates recently here. They say he's the best. His older brother Michael is the best bunter in the major leagues, or most successful bunter, I think it would be. And the guy was fast as anything. But I know you probably are looking at some guys or hearing about some guys. Is there anybody that's down in Greensboro right now that you're looking forward to seeing up in Altoona? And not saying, I'm not going to put you on the spot to say who is coming up, but who are you looking forward to seeing be in Altoona, like coming up here maybe this month or next?
Yeah, I think Charles McAdoo is a name that we're monitoring among us media folks in Altoona. He's obviously gotten some good numbers this year. I think Nick Samillo is another guy that has a chance to get here at some point this year if there's a need for another catcher in Altoona. We've got Carter Binns and Eli Wilson and Wyatt Hendry as our group right now. And I think Hunter Barco's probably in that conversation too, as a guy that could get here this year. It's sort of interesting because we joke about it a little bit that we always pull up the Greensboro box score each day to say, who could be coming, right? Who's playing well enough that could maybe help us, because it's been a tough year in Curve PA on offense and in the bullpen mostly. But I think those are a couple names that I've been tracking. I was also told at spring training that Sean Ross has a chance to be really good. I saw he had a 3-homer game the other day. So, a guy that seems like he's pretty raw in terms of catching. I think he just converted there last year. So that's a guy that I was told spring training could be pretty interesting. So we'll see, right? And maybe a Jack Brannigan gets back out on the field here soon and could be helpful too.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if there's a need in Indianapolis, then you pull from Altoona, and it can become that way. We've seen guys take jumps for little bits of times if there's like an absolute need, and the logistics of everything kind of work out. But last question here for you before I let you go and I get to my top 5 Pirates prospects and a little bit of the beer reviews. The question I have is there anybody that you're seeing there that may be on like the cusp of like righting the ship, getting like maybe a breakout and getting their numbers back up to maybe what we were looking forward to at the beginning of the season?
Oh, I think it's Jace Bowen for sure. I was actually talking to one of our hitting coaches, Justin Orton. He was up here a couple days ago, and we were just chit-chatting, and I was like, I think Jace is doing something different at the plate, and he talked about, we've made a change where they sort of adjusted his hand position where he's a little bit, held a little bit closer to his body. And what that has resulted in is that he's been more direct to the baseball in terms of his bat path. So he's putting the ball in play more consistently. I mean, Jace has always been a guy that has chased pitches out of the zone based on what I've seen. And at least now when the pitch is in the zone against him, he's having more success. He's getting his barrel to it more often. And, I think that's part of the learning process for him. I think we have seen sort of some signs of it the last couple of weeks here that, he's chasing less and he's putting the ball in play more often when the ball is in the strike zone. So I think those are two really good indicators for him because he's got great power. I think he plays the game so hard. He had an awesome hustle double here in the first inning on Tuesday night, sort of set the tone, with a real aggressive base running play. And then Seth Beer hits a home run after that. And, we're sort of like, yeah, here we go. And, Jace has gotten better, I think, in the outfield over the course of the year here. It wouldn't surprise me if we look at his numbers sort of first half, second half, and we're saying to ourselves, wow, that he goes from sort of what's he at now, 220-ish as a batting average for the year, that, he could hit 275 or 285 in this league in the second half, and it may only show as like a 250 for the year, but no, he's made a pretty meaningful mechanical adjustment that I think has been helpful to him.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, Jace had played well in Bradenton, played well in Greensboro. And, Altoona, it may all start in Bradenton, but it kind of seems like that we kind of get to see who these players are when they get up to Altoona and get to some better competition and stuff. But, John, you're going to have a game to call here pretty soon, hopefully, like we were talking about before, if the rain holds off and it can split the curve there. But anybody that doesn't, please go follow Jon Mozes. Once again, it's John without an H and @ spelled with a Z. Follow the Altoona curve. Go out to Altoona if you can. I got to get back out there again. I was telling everybody I got way too many baseball trips planned here, way too many things to do, but I definitely will make it out there before the season. Thanks a lot, John. Can't wait to do this again, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
If you ever see me out and about in Pittsburgh, you will always recognize me, and not just because of the white beard, but also because of the Y that is always on top of my head, the hat I always wear. The Yins brand, proud partners with Bucs in the Basement. 3 dynasties, 1 brand, Yins. Finally, 1 brand to rep all black and gold. Follow @ShopYins for new merch drops and giveaways. Order online at www.shopyins, the emphasis on the 2 Z's, high quality comfort, lightweight materials, a new modern look for the black and gold, made for Yins by a Yinzer. And we're back with the top 5 Pirates prospect performers, and I tried to mix this up at least a little bit because there have been some guys that have been performing, at all levels. I try to include the FCL at some point in time, maybe the DSL, but a guy that has been really catching my eye for the past, I guess it would be few weeks here, his last 4 starts down in Bradenton. It's Antoine Kelly. Antoine Kelly is not yet 21 years old, still 20 for a little bit longer for the most of the season here. He's a big guy from Aruba. The signing bonus, I looked it up and I thought I may have been mistaken, but I wasn't. It's a not applicable. So it's basically, under $10,000. So it's a guy that the Pirates scouted and saw and wanted. So far on the season, a little bit over 48 innings pitched, has a 1.253 whip, which is not something that, it's not great. But here's the thing is over his last 4 starts, a little over 20 innings pitched, almost 21 innings, a 1.74 ERA, the 0.968 whip. Antoine Kelly has been performing very well. Going up, and we're going to go to Altoona. Someone that can be helping out in the bullpen. Jon Mozes, our guest, was talking about how the bullpen has been struggling. But basically, Eddie Yean here. Uh, I know that it's a name that probably gets some ire from Pirates fans because he was part of the Josh Bell trade that brought in, Will Crow, and he was the other piece. He was the very young piece. At the time, he was the number 6 prospect in the national system, which wasn't really a great system at the time. But Eddie has 33 innings pitched, a 2.97 ERA. Don't like to look at the whip right now because overall for the season, it is a 1.3804 for a reliever. But I will say, over his last 8 appearances, a little over 13 innings pitched, he has 13 Ks, only 3 walks, a 2.03 ERA, and a 1.200 whip. We do see that coming down. He is giving up a little bit too much contact, not walking a ton, but has been performing better. Number 3, a guy, and as I've said before, these are in no particular order. It's what I usually say. Don't think I said it this time. Have had him on here before. Freddie Peralta's younger brother, Luis Peralta. Over his last 7 appearances, 11 innings pitched, 13 Ks, does have the 5 walks, but the whip itself is staying below 1, 0.727, 727, and a 0.82 ERA. Luis Peralta, a little bit older. I believe he's 23 years old, so a little bit old for the level. Could see him coming up to help in Altoona at some point. Mentioned previously by Jon Mozes, mentioned by me previously, I'm pretty sure every episode so far, Charles McAdoo, currently riding a 9-game hitting streak during which he has had 3 home runs. He basically, has 9 home runs on the season, and in those last 9 games has taken that from 6 to 9. He's actually hit 13 out of the last 14 games that he's played in. And the one you have to count, but it was a pinch hit. He was 0 for 1 in that game that he didn't receive a hit. So basically it's almost like a 13-game hitting streak for him on the season, slashing 343, 416, 572, those 9 home runs I mentioned previously, 13 doubles. He's got 3 triples, up over 230 plate appearances now. Could be a guy that, by the time this drops, he could already be in Altoona. And lastly, discussed him with John, have discussed him on X with some people, was talking with Jim Rosati at Northside Notch from North Shore 9. And then we also was talking to at Nola Jeffy from Bucs on Deck, the Substack, with a good friend, Anthony Murphy. Nola, also a good dude as well, talking about Braxton Ashcraft. Did make his AAA debut, as mentioned, 6 innings pitched, 4 Ks, 1 earned run, 0 walks. That was a great story from John about, from his dad. And, just basically if I miss the glove, if I miss my dad who's on the bucket, I got to go chase it, learn not to do it. But I'm looking here right now and I try to look at, okay, if he's averaging 6 innings, maybe he gets a 5-inning start, a 7-inning start like he's had previously. Isn't throwing a ton of pitches. He had, only about 72 pitches to get through 6 innings. But I'm still looking at maybe like 10 starts at the most. Even if you give him a little bit of a break, there, is a break in the middle of the season. You're looking at like the end of August, maybe beginning of September at the most. Gonna have to see what the health is like. Like I said, by the time you listen to this or by the time I hop off of here, it could be announced, that Martin Perez is coming back. We don't know what's going on with Quinn Priester. I made the comment on X and then did like the ducking, thing is that, maybe Ashcraft comes up to give Jones a break. Who's been up with the Pirates all year. Maybe he comes up to give Skeens a break at some point in time. and then maybe doesn't make it entirely through the season to be able to get those guys entirely through the season up at the majors. I don't want to speculate anything, but I really can't see him going more than, I'm saying, 120 innings. He's at, almost 60 already, 59 and 2/3. So, I mean, we're going to have to see how that plays out. You want to keep him healthy. And I know that you want to be competitive this year, but you also want to be competitive, for years to come here. And you don't want to blow it when he's getting this close, because we've seen those injuries happen in AAA before with like a Mike Burrows, and those are just so disheartening, and it just hurts even more when they're that close. So I'm not predicting anything, not projecting anything, but I'm looking at him, maybe if he continues to pitch and doesn't get quote unquote shut down at some point in time during the season, maybe making it to the end of August, beginning of September, on the high end. A pitcher of beer, a pitcher of beer, let's order another pitcher of beer. That pitcher of beer should come over here. I love that pitcher of beer. I took it a little bit easy again this past weekend. I went to a wedding, and I did the beer review from the Oakmont Country Club there. But then on Sunday, I went back out, and I've been looking for some good non-alcoholic beers. This time, it led me to Brooklyn Brewing. Brooklyn Brewing had a nice little 4-pack. They had the Special Effects Hoppy Amber, a really good, solid beer. A lot of times, I don't see too many of the ambers in the non-alcoholic. They had the Special Effects IPA. The next one was a Special Effects Pills. And then I had the Special Effects Grapefruit IPA. These were all really, really good. I would still say, and I would no offense to Brooklyn Brewing, because I do love like their Brooklyn Summer Ale. I may get some of that to take that up to the lake when we go here in a few weeks, when me and my family head up with the extended family, Brooklyn Summer. But I would probably still put, if you're looking for a good non-alcoholic beer, I would put the Brew Dogs slightly ahead of that. But going to be looking to see here, as you've seen or as you've heard pretty much, is that I've done 2 minor league news and brews this week. That's just how the schedule worked out with the guests. We'll be coming to you with 2 episodes of Bucs in the Basement next week, because that's how it worked out with those guests as well. But until next time, guys, let's go Indians. Let's go Curve. Let's go Hoppers. Let's go Bradenton Marauders. Let's go FCL and DSL Pirates.